Shalom Mordechai ben Rivka Halevi. Yeah. So it's in the bottom of Achar Hatfilo. Aval Achar Hatfilo, which is that's the last line after davening. So we explain that by davening, the Beinoni has this bonus that he is able to, you could even say, equate himself to the tzaddik. To that extent, maybe even equate himself to the tzaddik, because the whole difference of the tzaddik, and we're just going to recap this idea so we'll be able to pick up from Aval Achar Hatfilo. But the whole reason why the tzaddik is on a much higher level than the Beinoni is because the tzaddik transformed his whole essence, as opposed to the Beinoni. His essence is very much intact and very much alive. We say his essence, which means his mind, his heart is very much intact. When we say mind and heart, referring to even the mind and heart of his animal soul. In other words, on the heart of the Beinoni, the heart of the Beinoni is very much sending those signals to the mind to think, speak, and act contrary to the Ratzon Hashem, contrary to the way the Eibishter wants a Yid to act. The only thing is, why is he considered a Beinoni, not a Rasha? Because he never transgresses. He always makes sure that he is the one that in charge, which means his godly soul is the one which is in charge over the thought, speech, and action of the animal soul, that it should never, chas v'shalom, transgress. His thoughts are completely aligned with Ratzon Hashem, Hashem's desire. His speech is completely aligned with Hashem's desire. His action is completely aligned with Hashem's desire. The only thing is, his core, his heart, his mind is not transformed. And therefore he has a struggle. Had it been transformed, he would never have the struggle. Again, just bits of what we learned in the past. As opposed to the tzaddik is completely, has no struggle to begin with. Has no struggle to begin with means because his heart is completely dominant over the heart of the Nefesh Bahamis. His mind is completely dominant over the mind of the Nefesh Bahamis. Hence, the mind of the Nefesh Bahamis and the heart of the Nefesh Bahamis never flare up in a way that would send a signal to think or to want to do something, think, speak, or do something contrary to the Ratzon Hashem, because it's completely in charge. So Alter Rebbe said in the previous class that the time the Beinoni, you could even say, equates himself to the experience of the tzaddik in the time of davening, because in the time of davening, not only his thoughts, speech, and action are intact with the Ratzon Hashem, but also his whole inside. He's in love with Hashem. A person could exercise a true, healthy davening, even as a Beinoni. That at the time of the davening, his heart could have a true, fervorous love to Hashem, or fear of Hashem, and the same thing, his mind completely full with the reality of God and godliness. And again, that itself produces a strong and a solid heart expression to Hashem, may it be love or fear. So if you look at the Beinoni, the time of the davening, is very similar to the tzaddik, because his whole core, his whole essence, his mind and his heart is completely aligned with Ratzon Hashem, which means his mind is completely involved in understanding and perceiving and the godly reality. His heart is completely in love with Hashem, and that's the life of the tzaddik. So the difference and the truth of the matter is, in the time of davening, you cannot differentiate between the Beinoni and the tzaddik. So when do we know that he's really a Beinoni and he's not a tzaddik? It's after davening. The tzaddik finishes davening, his heart is still in love with Hashem. His mind is still involved with the complete occupation of understanding, perceiving, with a thorough understanding, comprehensive understanding of the reality of Hashem, and not only understanding of the world of Bina, but also in Das. He's completely cognizant in a way that it's anchored. He stands with the same, even if you will, intimacy with Hashem around the 24 hours a day, and his heart is completely engulfed in a flamey, fiery love or fear to Hashem, with Hashem, or from Hashem, naturally in the context of fear. The Beinoni walks out of Shul, he's finished davening, the animal soul starts flaring up again, and therefore you know that he's not a tzaddik. And that's later the Alter Rebbe is going to say, well, even it's the next page, if I'm not making a mistake, or this page, certainly between this and the next page, there's a difference of someone who's sleeping. Beinoni, when a person's sleeping, you don't know if he's alive or not. Obviously, if you're not in a if you're in close proximity, as we mentioned last week, you know that he's breathing. You see he's breathing, but from the distance, he's sleeping. You see he's like put out in a sense. It's when he wakes up, you know that even when he was sleeping, he was still alive. So when he's sleeping, you don't know. But when he wakes up, you know retroactively that he's really alive. Similarly, in the Beinani, when he's davening, is very similar to the tzaddik. And you don't know who's the tzaddik, who's the Beinani, because they both have an inner experience. Their heart and mind is completely aligned with the Ratzon Hashem. In other words, in the style of heart and mind. Mind meaning, say, he has a comprehensive understanding of the reality of Hashem. And he has das, he's completely cognizant, and he's completely aware, and he has a certain, not only a superficial knowledge or a hovering knowledge, more like an intimate knowledge with it. Or a knowledge which causes an intimate connection, a relationship, and a look in the Yikor, the Malka, and the beauty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then his heart is completely aligned as well with Avas Hashem and experiencing Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, so the Beinani and Tzaddik seems to be the same. But when the Beinani walks out of shul and he has the same struggles as he had like before he ever started davening, then you know that really even when he was davening, he's not a tzaddik. So the outer experience, like someone sleeping, you could think he put out, he's gone. It's when he wakes up, you know retroactively when he was sleeping, he was still alive. The same thing with the Beinani finishes davening, then you know that even when he was davening, he wasn't a tzaddik, but even the experience was a tzaddik type of experience. Similar that someone's sleeping, it's experience of kind of a death. Even the Gemara says, sleeping is 1/60th of death. Because on the surface, that's what it looks like. And similarly, in the Beinani, when he's davening. He looks similar to the tzaddik. It's when, after davening, like the guy wakes up, you know when he was sleeping, he was also alive. Similarly, with the tzaddik Beinani, after davening, then the Nefesh Bahamis flares up again. The tzaddik doesn't. His does. You know that he's a Beinani. And this is where we're holding Rak Aval Acharat Tefillah after davening. Bistalkus HaMeichin de Gadlus Ein Sof Baruch Hu. When the Meichin de Gadlus, which is the, as we mentioned last week, that how does the Beinani have this bonus? Where does it come from? If he had the ability to be the tzaddik throughout the day, he would also make the choice to be the tzaddik. He wants God. So how is it by davening the experience ignites from, in other words, the ability to experience the tzaddik experience has to come from somewhere. In other words, if it was up to him, he would also choose to be the tzaddik around the clock. But he doesn't. He can try and try, but he's not the tzaddik, so he has the struggle and the avodah and the mandate of the Beinani. So what happens by davening? If that's the case, he didn't go to Gan Eden, didn't fly somewhere away from this worldly reality. A person could be in shul and still have the problems, the difficulties, and the challenges of avodas Hashem as well. So what happens by davening? What happens by davening is there's a window of above opens up. That's the bonus. That it's not about me, because a Beinani can't be a tzaddik. It's not by choice. It's a window opens up from Lamaila. There's a window opened up and kind of a flow of Meichin de Gadlus. In other words, the person has the ability to tap into certain understandings of godliness, which he could not do 5 minutes before, 5 minutes after, or 1 minute before, 1 minute after. So what happens after davening? It's not he made a choice. I'm leaving that reality. He would love to be the tzaddik 24 hours a day, but it's not within his ability. So what happens after davening? That window basically closes, and that's what it means. That window closes basically. So then what happens is the evil which exists within the Beinani chayzer v'neir arouses again b'cholol hasmali in the left side of the heart. Misavet taiva l'taivas elam haza v'tanugo. That he, in the next page, that he could immediately, right after davening, the evil would arouse in the left side, and left side again, that's where the Nefesh Bahamis is stationed, and he could desire and have a lust and have a temptation to the worldly lusts and temptations, and more so to worldly pleasures. So what happened to the whole experience of davening? It's gone. Now, would he deliberately invest in worldly pleasures and worldly in worldly matters which fringe on chas v'shalom aveira, or a taiva which in essence is not aligned with Kedusha? Absolutely not. He would not implement, he would not give in to that taiva. But the taiva is there. That's what happens after davening. Because if he gave in to that taiva, he's no more a Beinani also not. And he's a Rasha. When someone deliberately makes a choice to give in to a taiva which is ungodly, he becomes a rasha. Especially if it's an avera, it's an overt avera. So the Beinoni would not give in, but the taiva he has, the lust, the temptation, which this is in the nature of the animal heart, is to invest in worldly matters and worldly pleasures. So the heart flares up, sends the signal. He won't do it, he won't think it, he won't speak it, but it flares up to desire a taiva of elam hazavatanu. So this is the Beinoni after davening. So what happens? How could he be careful to actually stay strong throughout the entire day? Is because a person's complete. He has complete authority in the end of the day. Because as human beings, what the Alter Rebbe introduces over here, as human beings, we have the ability that mind should govern over heart. So Alter Rebbe is not negating the fact that he has a heart which immediately after davening flared up to desire any type of elam hazavit, tanugim, and worldly pleasures, but right away his mind says, no, I will not do so. So just to see the difference right away of the tzaddik, the Rosh, and the Beinoni, to give that clarity over here, the tzaddik after davening is like davening. His heart loves Hashem for the next 24 hours as well, so he has no challenge. The Rasha has a taiva, but he gives into the taiva. The Beinoni is the middle one in the middle. That's why he's called the Beinoni. He'll have a taiva, he'll have a desire, but he will not give in to that desire. And here the Alter Rebbe continues. Rak, we have it over here. So you have the next page. Prepared a few over here. Nay. Here's another few. So that mipnei shaloi levadei mishpat hamlucha v'mashal b'ir. Because in the end of the day, the heart is not the only one which will say his opinion. It's not the one who has mishpat hamelucha. The word of judgment and the word of dominance in the city is not, the heart is not the only one that says his opinion. And therefore, in a yochel haitzi tavasim ekechel apel, he cannot bring out that taiva, that lust, that temptation, from a state of potentiality to a state of actuality. Lislavish bivari aguf, to invest in the limbs of the body. Chas v'sholem. In ma'aseh, dibur, machshav, in action, speech and thought. In other words, mamash lahamik machshavte b'tanugi l'mazeh, to invest his mind, to indulge in the pleasures of worldly matters. Eich l'malas l'taivas libay, how to fulfill, in other words, to go on, how to implement those taivas, those lusts, those desires. No. He's not the only one who has the final word. He could flare up, send the signals, but in the end of the day, the mind comes in and says to himself that chas v'sholem, if I will give in to that taiva, if I'll give in to that lust, if I'll give in to that desire, I will become a rasha. The Beinoni is not a rasha even for one moment, and that's what he says. Ki hamayach shalit al alev bitul dasei. Mind governs over heart by nature, v'teva yitzirasi, and the nature, the inherent nature of man. And it's interesting, the Alter Rebbe doesn't even say that this is to exclusion of the Yid. It says man is created. The advantage, the virtue of man over animal is that man has the ability to, on a constant basis, to govern mind over heart. It's a gift given to man. When you see somebody who is, his heart is dominant, he's described as an animal. For that matter, we mentioned the dog is called kelev because it's kuli lev, it's all heart, right? And the same thing is similar in an animal. The animal is all a matter of heart, about heart. He has a grand heart, in other words, not to do kindness, but again, a grand heart with taivas, with desires to eat and to sleep, and as we mentioned, the nature of the animals, he'll do whatever contributes to its comfort. And anything which stands in its way, it could even become aggressive. An animal can gore, an animal can harm another animal, even though it's not It's not particularly evil. The nature of goring is not something which is the norm in the animal, but he has the ability to gore also when things don't go his way. When you see somebody acting in that way, that what is dominant in his life is his heart, meaning to say that just to give in to the heart temptations, and if you stand in my way, I will gore you idea, you say, well, you're an animal. That's the way people describe people who act in such a way, because the superiority of human over the animal is that he has a brain, and a brain is 100% control over the heart, and it could be control of that not only from time to time on a periodic basis, but on a constant basis. That's the way man was created. To get angry, you have the ability to lock that anger. In other words, to can't lock it completely, but to shun it, to bring it down, not allow it to express in words, to calm the fury of the heart. If it means, if it's anger, or it's taiva, it has a lust, or it's jumping in a wrong direction, it's sending signals in a wrong direction, namely it's being animalistic, the mind has the ability to bring it down, to reduce the fervorness of the heart. That is the way man is created, and it's interesting. Dr. Rebbe doesn't say this exclusively, rather to the Yid, is the nature of the Yid. He says man, Jew or non-Jew alike. So the way we were created, which is very comforting, it's before even we enter the Avodas Hashem, the way we were created, biologically we're created in that way. Naturally, if we don't know about Avodas Hashem, it's always easier to be an animal as opposed to be a human being. But the beauty of this word over here is, yes, we need avodah. We have to know that depends on us, and we have to take the the initiative to be human and be a yid, and chas v'shalom not give in to our taivas, our lusts and desires. But it was what is comforting over here, the Alter Rebbe says, this is the way the human being is created. When you do avodas Hashem, it's not that you're creating something new. You're you're utilizing something which is inherent within you as a human being. And that's it. If you see these words, the beautiful expression of the Alter Rebbe, the Teva Yitzirasi, he elaborates on this. Not like Melech Shaltal, mind governs heart, now do an Aveda. No, Bitul Dasei, by birth, but Teva Yitzirah, the nature, an inherent nature. Shekach Neitzer Ha'adam, it doesn't say the Yid. Man is created Bitul Dasei, inherently. Shekol Adam Yochel, every man can, with his determination in his mind, least apik, to hold himself in, and to govern in that spirit of that temptation should believe in his heart, not to fulfill the desire of the heart, in action or in speech or in thought. And when one wants to exercise that, many times you can't just turn the knob and say no. The easier way is you want something not to express itself in one way, bring it to the entire opposite way. It's based on the Rambam. The Rambam deals with midas b'nei adam, the character of man. Or as an example, you want to fold a paper, or you want a paper to be in half. You'll leave the paper in half, it's always going to go back to it. You could hold it for a few moments, or maybe somebody could hold itself for a few moments, but it's always going to fall back. You want it to be in the middle, you fold it to the other side completely, and then you let go, it'll stand in the middle. So the Alter Rebbe says as well, when you see the taiva, the temptation, the lust is going in one direction, so to close the taiva, you won't be able to, because you're not a tzaddik. You're a Beinani. But what you do is you try to gear it, you try to channel it to the other side completely, meaning to say that try to get involved in something which is not aligned with that taiva. That will cool off the taiva, at least for the moment, that chas v'shalom, it should not enter into thought, speech, and action. Because remember, once it enters thought, speech, and action, he's not a Beinani, he's a Rasha. I repeat it, here and there, just to get that constant, to get that clarity. We should never lose focus. The taiva, desire of a yid, even to do something which is inappropriate, doesn't make him a Rasha. It's when he carries through the desire is implemented, may it be in action or in speech or even in thought, then he becomes a Rasha. The Beinoni is not a Rasha for a moment. So what does he do with that taiva? He tries to channel that taiva into something which is a complete different world. With this he will cool off that taiva, not chas. In other words, and cool off in this context means that it won't enter not only not into action, not only not into speech, but even into thought. He would remain completely clean, despite he had a taiva desire to impurify his thought, as an example. So what the person does, he tries to gear it. He gears it to a complete different direction, and particularly b'frat Alter Rebbe says tzad kedusha, not only in a different direction, in a different scenario, and so on, but the best way is bring it to the side of Kedusha. And Kedusha is the antithesis to anything which is Chas v'Shalom contrary to Kedusha. So the easiest way to put out that fire, at least for the moment, right? Because it could be in 5 minutes or maybe in 5 seconds it's going to flare up again. But at least that moment, to make sure that it never tainted my thought or speech and action, try to gear it to another scenario. The first thing, so befrat, or something which is opposite, ubifrat, and particularly to the tzad kedusha, to the side of kedusha. That is your safest bet that taiva is going to kind of subside and come down and cool off, chas v'shalom, not to make the person sin. And like it says, he brings a pasuk, like it says, V'ra'isi shei, the Shlomo HaMelech says, V'ra'isi, and I saw, sheyesh yisrin l'chachma min ha'sichlus, ki yisrin ha'er min ha'cheshech, that there is an advantage, a virtue, from wisdom over silliness. Sichlos is the opposite of wisdom. Ki yisrin ha'er min ha'cheshech, like the advantage of light over darkness. And basically, without Rebbe saying, it teaches the pasuk. There's a number of explanations of this pasuk. Naturally, Shlomo HaMelech is trying to aggrandize the notion of chokhmah, to say that the virtue of wisdom is so powerful. It's so in comparison to sichlus, to the opposite of chokhmah, as much as you can't think about two opposites more than light and darkness. That's how much greater the chokhmah is min ha'sichlus. But Alter Rebbe teaches, it's also interconnected to this simple meaning. But Alter Rebbe teaches, what does it take to get rid of darkness? It doesn't take much. Firstly, you don't fight with the darkness. It's a dark room. You can't come in, okay, we have a lot of darkness to get rid of. This is a huge room, and we got to celebrate over here. So we have to get rid of this whole chunk of darkness. So you're going to start talking about it and dealing with it, and then you're going to take a broom and open the door and start chasing the darkness away. That's not the way you fight darkness. You put on one tiny match, and make the match, you want to make the fire greater, light a candle. And if you want to make sure that it's not only not dark, it's not even dim anywhere, you put in 2 candles or 3 candles, and there goes the darkness. You didn't even deal with the darkness. You didn't even pay attention. You didn't dignify the darkness. What you did, you just introduced light. And the same thing when the Beinoni has a struggle, that the heart is sending signals to the thought, speech, and action. Don't try to jump the heart and believe that that's the way you're going to reduce its fervor, its flare, its direction, the signals it's sending to the thought, speech, and action, chas v'shalom, to impurify the thought, speech, and action. Don't deal with it on its own basis. In other words, to fight it. It's like someone who's fighting darkness. You will never win darkness if you will fight darkness. The only way to win darkness is light a match. And the same thing Alter Rebbe says, bring your heart to a different state, to a different scenario. Especially, Alter Rebbe says something which is hepech, opposite than where the heart is going, where the heart is driving, where the heart is inclined to. And Alter Rebbe says, "Ubifrat al tzad kedusha," to the side of kedusha. In other words, take a torch, light a torch. The darkness is going to go in a moment. And this is what Shlomo HaMelech meant with this pasuk. That just like light has complete dominance and rulership over darkness, in a way that a little bit of light pushes away much of the darkness. And how does it push it away? Not that the light becomes like that big broom or that big shovel which is getting rid of the darkness. it comes in a way that it doesn't even dignify the darkness. It doesn't even deal with the darkness. It's pushed away on its own. In other words, without any effort, without dealing with the darkness itself. The Shlomo Melech is telling us, automatically, the nonsense of klipa, which is driving in the heart in the direction and sending its signals to chas v'shalom, taint the thought, speech, and action, that is sichlus harbe. That's a lot of darkness, because God forbid if it enters. So firstly, even before it enters, what is the energy that is trying to send? It's energy which is contrary to Ratzon Hashem. And namely, if chas v'shalom it's successful to enter into the thought, speech, and action, it will taint the neshama. It will make the person from a state of a bein into a state of a rasha, Rahman l'slan. So there's so much sichlus, there's so much nonsense, there's so much darkness over here. But how do we get rid of this darkness, of this klipa and sitra achra, which are the forces of tumash b'chol smali on the left side, as the Alter Rebbe says in the brackets, this is a spirit of shtus, of folly, of nonsense. And how is it pushed away? Similar to darkness, rather. Similar to darkness, the way we get rid of darkness is that we just put on a light. In the same way, because of the chokhmah, which is the nefesh elikis shebemeach, which is primarily, as we learned in Pedic Test, is primarily resides in the mind. Asher Ritzaina, what is its desire? Limshul levada be'ir, to dominate solely in the city, to be the only and sole dominator in the city, which is in the person's system. Or the slavish b'shleishul levusha, now that the chachma of the nefesh elikis wants to invest in the three garments, b'chol haguf, not only in b'chol haguf kulei, in the three garments, which is the thought, speech, and action, and b'chol haguf kulei, can only entire body, which is machshava, dibur, ma'aseh, taryag, mitzvah, teda, kinal, which is the thought, speech, and action of taryag, mitzvah, teda. And that is the message of the chachma. That is the message of the brain, of the godly soul, which says, I really want to make sure that this whole system, this whole city is under my dominance, under my flag. So on the heart level, it cannot win. On the heart level, the nefesh bahamis is extremely potent. Had the godly soul taken over the heart, the person would not be a Beinoni, he would be a tzaddik. That is the life of the tzaddik. So he cannot. So the darkness does flare up. That's the life of the Beinoni. Fact. I don't want it to flare up. I want to be the tzaddik. You're not the tzaddik. When am I giving the tzaddik? When the Eibishter wants you to be the tzaddik. Till then, you have a heart which could introduce a lot of darkness. And darkness in the sense, like true darkness, which is a darkness associated with the spirit of klip and sitracha. That is the signal which the soul is sending. The heart is sending. So it's very dark. So what is controlling that darkness? If he's not a tzaddik, the answer is, this is the mayach shalit al-lev, the mind being dominant over the heart, the mind governing the heart, at least with a message and saying, you want to flare up. You want to rather Satan send these signals to fill the heart with this nonsense, a chas v'shalom, to even be on the border, mamish at the border. What's between heart and thought is a small, thin border. And you are standing at the border, fringing, in other words, waiting to enter into the thought. That's a lot of darkness. Because again, when chas v'shalom it enters into the thought, he thinks deliberately something when Hashem says not to think about, he's a rasha. So there's an enormous amount of klip and sitra achra. So what is stopping it? That signal which is coming from the mind and saying, my little heart, I cannot control you, that you should not flare up, because if I did, you would be a tzaddik, you wouldn't be a rasha, you wouldn't be a Beinoni. But one thing I could tell you, that cool down. It ain't going to happen. You're not entering into my thought, speech, and action. I am not becoming a rasha even for one moment, not a second, not even a split second. So cool down. The nefesh bahamis, the animal soul, cools down. It could flare up, like we said, not only 5 minutes later, 5 seconds later. As we all know it, that at times, and that we all know it at times, that we think we're done with a certain, and then all of a sudden we have again the same challenge of a minute later, or a few seconds later. Okay, then my mind will have to send another signal to the heart, cool down again. So to transform the heart, that's the life of the tzaddik. but he's not a tzaddik, so the heart pipes up from time to time. This is the advantage of the human being, that mind governs over the heart, so he cannot completely penetrate the heart in a way that the heart of the Nefesh Elikis should be dominant, because that's a tzaddik, or that's the experience of davening the life of the Beinoni, and after davening the heart flares up again, and the heart of the Nefesh Elikis is not in control over the heart of the Nefesh Bahamis. Meaning to say, it doesn't stand with a fervor's love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like a tzaddik, or like the way he stood in the time of prayer, but the mind sends that message to the heart. It's like someone comes into the teacher comes into the classroom, and then the kids are jumpy, and the kids are extremely uncalm, and so on. It's not because he came in the children become completely calm and tranquil. Not necessarily. They don't become angels. But when he comes in, he disciplines them, and they truly can be and would become quiet and sit in their places. And early they could still be jumpy. And he walks out another moment, they're going to jump around again. It's not that he completely transformed them, but when he comes in, he sends a signal. They can and would and will stop at once from their the way they were acting till then. And he disciplines them. He sends a message. You have this jumpiness within you, but now we're starting to learn. You have to sit down in your places, and everybody take out your pencil, pen, and paper. If he's a good teacher, he will be successful. The same thing. The heart of the Nefesh Bahamis is not dominant over the heart. The Nefesh Elikis is not dominant over the heart of Nefesh Bahamis, because again, or it's the life of the tzaddik, or it's the life of the Beinoni. When he davens, after davening, the heart flares up. What controls him that he should chas v'shalom not enter thought, speech, and action? That's the discipline from the mind. The mind of the Nefesh Elikis says no. In a way, again, it ignites the fire. Fire, as we said before, fire just removes all the darkness. But again, he's not going to remove it for good, because he's still a Beinoni. But at least at the moment, the mind sends that very clear and unequivocal message to the heart: no, this is not happening. And the heart immediately will cool down, at least for the moment, for that challenge or for that experience, even though it could flare up again. And then Nefesh Bahamis or Nefesh Elikis would have to say it again. Many times we have to say it to ourselves 100 times or even 1,000 times a day. But at that moment, in that experience, the Nefesh Elikis has the ability to cool the Nefesh Bahamis, the chas v'shalom, it should not enter thought, speech, and action.